Yeah, I gotta get water. I can't talk. Say what? Oh, so it doesn't turn into a Oh, yours. Oh. Oh, okay. I can bring this in. Because we want to get out. Oh, stop. You gotta know. Well, Alderman Sharp had to leave, so I gotta. He had to leave, so I gotta pick the rest of the committee, and I'm not familiar with this, so I need some quiet time. Joe. Almost, but I gotta pick up the committee now, and I don't have a script, so I gotta make this. Dan has to leave. I needed to get that Macedonian, and I got it, so. And you were loud about it too.
Yes.
That was a bold move.
had to call, then I had to call you guys, anything happened. I'm the first person, and I've got you. Now there's other 7 members on that board too. Don't call me at midnight. You always, that it's just, you guys call it. You guys can call, and I'll come down. Right.
My wife make like panzerotti. Is it allowed to have a? We can have a few people over. My wife will make panzerotti. Would that be considered a meeting? Panzerottis?
What's a panzerotti?
It's like an inside. It's like a pizza, but the sauce and the tomato and the cheese are on the inside. Panzerotti. Well, I use the Italian. I'm Italian. I'm
As
sorry.
long as there's no meat in it.
No. Still the same one.
Who's taking it?
John, if you still got any voice left.
Dan left?
Yeah.
You running for mayor or something?
Okay, I call to order the continuation of the Planning, Zoning, and Building Committee of November 8th. Will the minute taker please show that, with the exception of Alderman Shockey, who apologizes that he couldn't stay after my long and drawn-out speech, that I am now taking this over, but everybody else is in fact here. The next item to be discussed is a report and recommendation of case number 07-Z10, the JMPM Properties rezoning from annexation R1 to R3 to allow a two-lot subdivision. Essentially, the scenario is that the petitioner requests a rezoning from R1 to R3 upon annexation to permit a two-lot subdivision of property located at 5N060 Central. The proposed two-lot subdivision will be for future development. The existing house on the property will remain for the near future. The main reason for annexation and rezoning at this time is that the well on the property is failing and the petitioner would like to tie into the city water and sewer system. I'd like to hand this over to staff if there is anything that should be added.
I'm missing that one.
I think your presentation said it all. The fact is, the only other thing I would mention is the fact that the existing property that is there now, the single-family detached home, does comply to the R3 district as well as what the vacant lot will. The petitioner is present this evening. Should anyone have questions in regard to this petition, and if you would like to ask him questions, I'm sure he'll be able to be at the podium and answer them.
Let's, I'd like to just entertain a motion and then call a question, if that is okay. Can I have a motion to approve the rezoning upon annexation from R1 single family to R3 single family to permit a two-lot subdivision? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Anybody, anything to add? Alderman Knipe?
Yeah, I got a question. So, okay, the existing house will remain for the near future? Mean they're gonna tear it down at some point to, because the way it looks here, right now, they're awful close to the, lot line. And I can't really tell what side that would be.
Mr. Forrest, please approach the podium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Forrest, representing JMPM Partners. And in response to your question, as I recall, the existing house would be about 11.5 feet from that lot line upon the subdivision of the lot into 2 lots. There will be no nonconformities created with this subdivision. It's 11.35 feet from the theoretical dividing line.
Okay, since it is R2, they could, on the lot that's not built now, they could bring that over a little bit to comply if it's not in compliance with that? Would that be correct? Because it shows an
we could- well-
82, both of them 82.96 frontage.
Correct. And the existing house with the R2 zoning would be required to be 8.29 feet from the property line, and it would be 11.35 feet from the property line.
What about that driveway extension?
Well, upon development of the lots, that driveway extension would obviously be removed.
Does that answer your questions, Alderman Knight?
Yes.
Alderman Coles, I think I saw your hand.
John, that lot is full of trees,
Correct.
beautiful trees. And some of them fell down in that storm. I know about the property. I would have loved to buy that piece of property, but I couldn't get it because they had an inn. Are you going to try to save some of the exterior trees that are around the lot? I mean, I know you have to cut down some trees in the middle in order to put a house up there.
Right.
The way the driveway is, it's a gravel driveway and it doesn't have any blacktop on it.
Correct.
And so it's minor. It's a beautiful lot. And see if you can save as many trees around the lot. I know you have to take the trees down in the middle, but try to save the
Yeah.
trees that are around the lot.
Yeah,
'Cause
no, that
that's-
is definitely a given.
That makes that lot,
I agree.
all right? And of course, you know that you have to, if you take a tree down, you have to replace it. That's part of and that goes for city workers too, okay? Thank you.
Alderman Winger?
Mr. Forrest, will you agree to not remove any trees until, between, if you're granted this approval, and then between when you petition to build the house?
Yes, we would agree to that.
Thank you.
Alderman Police?
So we're gonna subdivide this into 2 lots. The one lot's gonna be sold off, or we're gonna build a house on it right away?
Well, I mean, it's my brother and I that are the owners of this property. We've had it for about 1.5 years while it's been unincorporated. The plan, in a perfect world, is that development of these 2 lots would be several years down the road. I grew up in the house next to this lot. My mother still lives there and stepfather, and we just, at this point, would like to maintain it. At this point in time, as far as my brother and I have agreed, we're not going to sell off either one of the lots. And to answer Alderman Winger and Alderman Coles' concerns, at some point in time in the future, when the existing house would be torn down, the new house that would go on that particular lot would be in the same footprint. So hopefully, all the trees that are there will stay, at least on that lot.
Alderman Police?
The reason I was asking is because right now you own both lots, but if for some reason you sell both lots, the next guy might come in, R3, he's allowed 50-foot frontage. Is that correct?
65-foot.
Okay. But I know this is continuous. Everything else on Central's been done at the R3, so we're not spot zoning, right? Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a report and recommendation for the telecommunications ordinances. Having reviewed these ordinances, everything we need to know is in them. So I would like to make a motion to pass the ordinances to council, where any questions can be asked of staff at that time. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question?
I have a lot, but I always took it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Items for future meetings, the administrative adjudication. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? We can talk to Alderman Shockey about that, or we can talk about it here. All right, I will make a motion to adjourn this portion of this evening's meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my report.
What's next?
Okay, I'm calling to order the Public Works Committee meeting of November 8, 2007. Will the minute taker please reflect that all aldermen are present with the exception of Alderman Shockey, and Mayor Johnson is present. And the first item is I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 25, 2007. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item is item number 4, report and recommendation on fuel efficiency alternative fuel pilot program. And this is a spinoff of the Clean Air Accounts committee work that we've been doing. And on that committee, myself as chairman, Roy Wesley, Chief Frank Benowitz, Assistant City Manager Jeff Murmis, and Alderman Coles. And through the work, we've made quite a few strides, I believe. We became a bronze level participant with Clean Air Accounts, and that is a regional effort, Clean Air Accounts. And then also we're working on moving to the silver level. And through the work of of Jeff Murmis, we now have a CD that we hand out when people come and inquire about their business licenses. They can pick up a CD that gives them efficiency tips. It's a guide for small businesses putting energy into profits. So this is just one of the measures we've taken. We have a booth at our special events now that has efficiency measures that our residents can review and use in their homes. Also, just to note that at one of our earlier meetings, John Walton with the DuPage Forest Preserve District met with us, and he took us through the efforts that the Forest Preserve has in place as far as clean air measures. A lot with fuel, a lot with diesel, etc. And he shared with us a presentation, and he is here with us tonight to take us through that presentation. And then the committee took that information and then worked with staff to come up with what are the efforts that we're currently doing and what efforts do we want to do in the future and what can we do now at a relatively effective cost. And so we do have some recommendations for council tonight. So with that, I'd like to introduce John Walton, and he's going to take us through a presentation of what he's learned throughout the years, and he is a point person of putting all these alternative fuel processes in place at DuPage Forest Preserve. And I'll hand the floor over to John.
Thank you. If you'll excuse me, I'm losing my voice, but I wanted to come here tonight so I could go through this with you. I'm with the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County. I'm the fleet manager. I'm also the vice chairman of Chicago Area Clean Cities Coalition on Partners for Clean Air, and also the governor's advisory force for biofuels. With that, this is a program that was actually put together to explain what alternative fuels are. I want to go through this fairly quickly. This normally takes about 2 hours. We're going to try and go through it in about 20 minutes. So if we could have you hold questions till after I'm done, I'd appreciate it, because what normally happens is we get off on tangents and it's very difficult to get through the program. First thing that everybody wants to know is where are we with gas and oil? And today, there is no shortage of gas and oil. Prices are going up, and there is going to be a shortage, probably not in the too distant future. Right now, we have 5% of the world's population. We use 25% of the world's energy in this country. China and India are demanding more oil, and you will see in the future, when oil becomes harder to get, that China and India with the United States will be vying for oil. There will not be in the future enough to go around. If we do not reduce the use of oil, we'll continue to poison the air that we breathe, and the world demand will exceed the ability to supply that oil, and we will have in jeopardy the lifestyle that we have come to enjoy, as our cars will not be able to go as far, transportation costs will continue to rise to the point that it will make everything very expensive. Now is the time to change. We can do it voluntarily, or in the future, we can do it going kicking and screaming. That's pretty much the choices that we see when we're in the business with the Clean Cities people and the federal government. Brings us to what are alternative fuels. You can have fuels that extend the use of gasoline or oil, such as E85 ethanol, or biodiesel. We use B20. There's compressed natural gas, liquid propane gas, liquid natural gas, hydrogen electricity, gaseous coal, vegetable oil. Ethanol, this is something that you folks can look at seriously. It's very easy to do. Ethanol cars are being produced. There's about 1.5 million of them on the road right now. General Motors turned out almost 500,000 of them this year, along with Ford at about 200,000, and Chrysler's also turned them out. More will be produced next year, and the number will keep growing, I feel, in the near future. In the Midwest, we actually use E85, which is 15% gasoline, 85% ethanol, primarily made from corn. In the winter, we do go to an East 75 blend. That's for startability issues. Brazil is way ahead of us, as most of the world, with alternative fuels. They are 100% for their cars able to produce their own fuel, and they are using E100 made out of sugarcane. Sugarcane's cheaper, keeps their costs down even less than what we're paying for fuel for that, and they do not have to import oil to run their cars. An amazing feat. They've been using E85 for almost 30 years. Biodiesel, B100, would be 100% biodiesel made from biomass. We recommend a blend of 20% biodiesel that we have found is safe in virtually everything. I run it in everything we've owned. We've been running it for about 6 years now. We have had 0 problems with that fuel. We have no startability issues. Cost is about the same. And it cleans the air. It's helping to displace fuel. Even though at 20%, it's only 20% of what we use for fuel that's being displaced, but it still lowers our dependence on foreign fuel. Biodiesel in the past has been knocked that it actually increases NOx here. That was true. The new blends of biodiesel, however, do not do that, and they're proven to be much cleaner than diesel fuel. It also adds 400% lubricity to your engines, which allows your engines to run more efficiently and last longer, as well as not putting in as much soot into your engines, which again, the deposits of soot will cause heat and cause your engines to last a shorter period of time. Compressed natural gas is my favorite fuel. I won't spend a lot of time on it. It actually has 95% less pollutants than gasoline. And at this point, the Forest Preserve District, after rebates, we pay about 80 cents a gallon equivalent to gasoline. However, the infrastructure is very expensive. Something you might want to look into, but nothing you probably want to do yourself unless you can get a grant. Liquid propane puts about 75% less pollutants into the air than gasoline. A station can be put in for a few $1,000s, actually less than a gasoline station. Currently, we're paying about $1.65. It just went up for the heating season. We were paying $1.35 a month ago, and we're paying $1.65 a gallon equivalent to gasoline. Conversions we're doing for about $6,000, and there's a $4,000 rebate. Your net cost for doing a conversion would be about $2,000 on a medium-duty pickup truck. So this is something that can be very economical to look into. Putting in a tank is also relatively inexpensive, as I said. So this is also a possibility for a city to do. Liquid natural gas, again, also a very clean gas, the same as compressed natural gas. It's stored in liquid form, extremely expensive, very clean, mostly used for long-haul trucking. Hydrogen, I am, as well as many experts, are totally convinced this is the wave of the future. The cheapest way we can get hydrogen right now in mass is actually from natural gas. So if you have a natural gas compressor, you'll be able to get hydrogen out of the natural gas using an osmosis process. I don't believe that will be the wave of the future. However, hydrogen will be the wave of the future, and I'm convinced that hydrogen will also be the economy of the future. Right now, we base the world economy on oil. In the future, whoever can control hydrogen at a cheap rate will control a great deal of the world's finances. The oil companies are looking into this. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the planet. However, it never appears in its natural state on its own. It's always connected to something, which makes it a challenge to get the hydrogen and produce it in quantities to operate vehicles in an economical manner at this point. Hydrogen vehicles typically will run not off of hydrogen as a burning fuel. You can take your internal combustion engine. You can take gaseous hydrogen, put it into that engine, and take virtually any engine and run it on hydrogen. The pollution would be oxygen and water. Even in an internal combustion engine, however, to convert that engine is about $25,000 for a small engine. Not very economical. Hydrogen right now isn't here. It's expensive to get here. There's only one public fueling station in the state, and that's in Des Plaines. Hydrogen, however, is going to be something that's used in the future, and it will be used to generate electricity in fuel cell vehicles, and I believe that's the way the world is going to go. There are fuel cell vehicles now being produced. They will go on sale next year in California in limited quantities. First FSX vehicle that I saw produced by Honda several years ago cost over $1 million. Last year they claimed they had the price down to $50,000. Fuel's still a problem. Highway 1 in California, however, you can drive up and down the entire coast and fuel your hydrogen vehicle today. Hydrogen is coming, and it will be our future. Electricity. Electricity has zero emissions. However, you also have to look at the emissions put out by the plants that make the electricity. That does produce pollution. The electric vehicles are here. There's a Tesla vehicle that can have a speed of excess of 160 miles an hour and go 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. Electric vehicles are practical. That vehicle is also very expensive, however. There are electric vehicles coming out. There's currently Phoenix that's making a pickup truck, has a range of an excess of 100 miles. Plug-in electric vehicles cost about 3 or 4 cents a mile, 3 or 4 cents a mile for fuel. Your fuel economy is awesome on it. Something the city could potentially look into for local vehicles that would be running to do meters, running to do just around city property, to do inspections and those types of things where you can go back and plug it in at night and recharge. Typical electric vehicle that's available has a short range, sometimes 30 or 40 miles. Sometimes they have a long charge time, but you have very little maintenance on it because the engines, the electric motor, which replaces the engine, takes very little maintenance and is extremely reliable. So for a city use, this is something that the city could consider as more electric vehicles become available. It could be a very economical way for you to do some of the jobs you have to get done. Gaseous coal, if you're familiar with that, Southern Illinois has as much energy in coal as Saudi Arabia has in oil. As gas price has been low, getting gaseous coal and make it into a fuel, it can either be made into a gas or it can be made into a liquid fuel. To do that in the past has been very expensive and also pollutes a lot. However, they have come up with a way to make gas out of coal by taking the pollution. They take it down into the bedrock several hundred feet, release the emissions into the bedrock. As it comes back up, the bedrock cleans the emissions and traps them underground, and they're claiming this is safe. As this is happening, gas can be made out of gaseous coal. Again, it's going to be a limited supply. It's not endless, but we have it here in Illinois, and it is something that's a potential for the future. The Air Force has been testing this in airplanes now for over 2 years. Vegetable oil. Veggie oil in its natural state is actually what Dr. Diesel intended the diesel engine to run on. However, in practicality, people are using vegetable oil, and it is 22 times more soot it puts into the air than diesel fuel. It's a very dirty fuel. We do not recommend it. It can be treated. It has to have the glycerin taken out of it, and then has to be pH balanced in order to try and make it into a fuel, which basically takes a chemist's degree, not something we would advise for a fleet or for somebody to do at home easily. It is an alternative, but it's not one that's approved by the EPA and not one that we would recommend as a fuel for vehicles. Hybrids. Everybody's probably heard about hybrids. We could do about 4 hours just on hybrids and the different types. To get very simple, you have mild hybrids, which use what's called anti-idling technology. Basically, a mild hybrid, when you come to a stop, it shuts the engine off. As you go to start again, it simply starts the engine. You save about 15% around town for local driving. Very few are being made now. General Motors experimented those for a couple of years with pickup trucks. The gas-electric hybrid means it starts on gasoline, uses electricity as a boost. That is the old Honda Civic as well as the Honda Accord, new Honda Civic, and the Prius, as well as most of the hybrids that are coming out now are an electric over gas. That means they start on electricity. Electricity is very efficient to get torque to start the vehicle, and then the gasoline engine kicks in normally around 25 to 30 miles an hour in this country. That gives you a great deal better efficiency around town and makes it an efficient vehicle. For city use, it's something that could be looked into. I've looked into it for some uses in places. However, sometimes payback is extremely slow because of the high initial cost of the car. The batteries are much more reliable than most people think they are. I believe Toyota has an 8 or 10-year warranty on their batteries, which is amazing. And as battery technologies get better and the cost of the batteries comes down, I believe this is going to be a very viable fuel. Also, when they use an alternative fuel instead of just gasoline to do it. The next thing that's coming in with these is also going to be called plug-in hybrid electrics. That's where you have a second battery pack. You actually plug it in and charge it overnight. They're experimenting with that now. Toyota's promised they'll have it on the market in about a year. And there's people reporting getting up to 80 to 100 miles per gallon on a plug-in electric vehicle when they're commuting about 60 miles a day, which is an amazing feat to do with a plug-in. So this is something that's going to be part of the future, along with the electric vehicles. The electric plug-ins have a very limited range, like I said. The nice thing with the hybrid is it basically gives you an unlimited range, so you can just keep going. Alternative technologies, hybrids we just talked about, fuel cell vehicles, anti-idling technologies, and engine exhaust cleaners. Fuel cells are going to be the wave of the future, but we're probably not going to see it as a practical means for transportation in the next 20 years, so we've got a ways to go. Anything we do now, I believe, is going to be a bridge to that, but there's things that we can do. Simple things, anti-idling technologies. If you don't have an ordinance to limit your idling, you should pass an ordinance to do so. Idling an average small car burns about a half a gallon to a gallon of fuel an hour and gets you absolutely nothing from it. Averaging a large truck or idling a large truck can burn 1 gallon to 2 gallons of diesel fuel an hour. And again, you get no work from it. I had a car that got about 16 miles to the gallon just shutting it off at red lights and trains. It went from 16 miles to the gallon to 18 miles to the gallon. And you put that into a city budget or a budget like the Forest Preserve, and adding 2 miles to the gallon adds up to dollars pretty quickly, as well as it doesn't put unnecessary pollution into the air. Anti-idling technologies also have things that are designed so you can shut your engines off and keep your employees comfortable, such as heaters that are made by a company that actually recirculates the water, keeps the water going. In a car, they can keep the heat going with the engine off for about 45 minutes. In a large truck, they can do it up to 4 hours. So there's technologies such as that if you've got an officer out in the field, they can actually shut the engine off and still have heat. We've been experimenting with those. We've got them in about 5 of our vehicles right now experimenting, and so far they're working pretty well. They've actually been around since the 1970s. Technology now is all computerized and much better than it's been in the past. Engine exhaust cleaners. If you've got old trucks, diesel emissions are really bad. You can take those old trucks and have exhaust cleaners retrofitted. There are some grants out there There's a school, clean school bus program that the IPA, I believe it is, will pay for these buses to be retrofitted at no charge to the schools. And it is a huge thing right now that they are pushing. You can retrofit your trucks. We've retrofitted most of our old trucks at this point. We got grant money that paid for it, and it actually reduces the emissions a great deal to current standards. So if you're concerned about reducing the emissions on your old vehicles, this is something that can certainly be done by the city. Fuel cells, as I said, I'd bet on these that this is going to be our future. This is going to be the future of our transportation. But again, this is something that is a long way off in our future, but something we definitely need to keep our eye on. We talked about anti-idling technologies. A lot of this is just training, educating your employees and yourselves to shut your vehicles off when you don't have to. A lot of people want to heat their engines up before they drive it in the winter. That's actually wasting money. Mine idles for 10 seconds before I put it into gear and go. Your engine will actually heat up faster when it's put under pressure, so when it's working, it'll heat faster. You'll actually get heat faster than leaving it in your driveway idling. Again, sitting in the driveway idling, that is on a cold engine. The most pollution you can put into an air is to idle it cold. You will not have an engine that will put more pollution into the air than when you start it and let it sit cold and idle. So again, heating the engine up the fastest way is to drive it, and that will actually allow less pollution to go into the air while it heats up. The Autotherm units we talked about, larger trucks, which probably isn't appropriate for you, they're actually putting outboard generators on it so that when these guys drive overnight, they can park their truck. They have a small generator that'll give them all the electric they need and apply AC. There's also somewhere around 200,000 of the units at truck stops now that fit into the window, and the drivers pay under $2 an hour for this. It gives them air conditioning, cable TV, internet service, heat, the whole 9 yards, and their engines don't idle at all. So it's actually cheaper to pay $2 an hour than it is to just pay for the fuel, let alone the wear and tear on their engines. So there's a lot of neat technologies coming out. A lot of them might not apply to the city, but it's things that the city should be aware of and can potentially incorporate some of this into what you do on a daily basis. Engine exhaust cleaners typically are catalytic conversions on diesel engines or particulate traps. Some of them will require some minor amount of maintenance to empty it. All of the new trucks after 2006, the 2007 model year being made as of January 1st this year, must have that incorporated to it. It's part of the new truck technology. Most of them burn off automatically, or there's a light that comes on the dash that will tell you when this has to be done as a maintenance item. But if you're buying new trucks, you will have that technology, like it or not. It's the law of the land. Older trucks can be retrofitted with some of these technologies. This is a chart that is gas gallon equivalents. When we talk of alternative fuels, each fuel has a different value as far as how much energy it has. If you look at a gallon of ethanol, a physical gallon of ethanol actually has, I can't remember what it is, almost 30% less energy than a physical gallon of gasoline. So when you look at your cost on that, you actually have to realize that you're going to get somewhere between 10 and 20% less miles per gallon on a gallon of ethanol. So if you're going to do the math on it, you have to realize that and take that into account. As long as the fuel is cheaper, which traditionally it has been around here if you purchase it right, you can break even or actually end up a few cents ahead. There's also rebates on biodiesel and E85 through the IEPA that you can apply for every year. We get back several $1,000s from the IEPA for using these fuels, and that can be done with any of the fuels. And this is the fastest I've ever gone through this. There's my information. Last time we went through this with your committee, I think we were here about 2 hours with all the questions they had.
Wow.
So I will happily entertain any questions I can answer, or if I can't answer them, I will look for answers for you and get back to you.
Thank you. Alderman Knight.
You said in Brazil that they use 100% sugar or sugar byproduct for their,
Yeah, they're using ethanol made out of sugarcane. Sugarcane is actually cheaper to produce ethanol from, and they've got vast amounts of sugarcane that they can grow it from. We can't grow that much sugarcane here. And by doing this over the course of the last 30 years, they've actually become independent for motor vehicles on importing oil.
Who's manufacturing their cars? I mean, like, as we know, it's a big,
Manufacturer in the world is making ethanol operational vehicles. We just don't have them here. You'll also find General Motors, Ford, and all of them are making vehicles that are running on diesel, small diesel engines. They're making vehicles that run on natural gas and LPG, but they're not selling them here because it hasn't proved to be economical. The American public has a love affair with oil.
thank you.
Alderman Coles.
I gotta agree with him on one item that you said.
Okay.
You get in your car, you turn the key, you put it in drive, and you go. And that's the quickest way to warm up your car. These people that start up their cars, I hit a button, oh, my car's gonna be all nice and warm when I get in. Absolutely crazy. I've been fighting this for 40 years, and nobody believes me.
All it does is waste fuel.
All you do is turn the key, jump in and go. And that heats it up. By the time the end of the block comes, you got heat coming. Thank you for saying that.
Alderman Wesley.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming because I'll tell you, it added a lot to me knowing that all these things are coming. And I really have to hand it for the Clean Air Committee that is formed. They are really taking the horns and running with it, and I'm glad the committee is. And you know what? You definitely got my support on stuff coming down the pipe. But
Thank
I
you.
really thank you for coming tonight and giving this presentation.
You're welcome.
Open up my eyes on a lot of stuff.
No, it was really quick. We didn't give you, didn't go too much in depth, as even the mayor knows. He was here when we gave the other presentation.
Alderman Lewitton.
I also, like John, was impressed that you said things that I believe in, and that is that there will be oil wars in the future because of what's happening into the supply of oil. It is not unlimited. In fact, if you look at the oil drilling maps in the Darfur region, every area where the murders are going on is in areas where China has drilling rights. And it's to their advantage to have the people in the villages disappear so they can do their oil drilling.
Yeah, oil is an amazing thing that everybody wants a piece of it, and they're willing to kill for it.
Okay, so then what the committee did after, actually, in consultation with John Welton, and after hearing the presentation, we narrowed in on certain points that we feel that we could either pilot or put in place relatively shortly, and we would get benefit from a clean air perspective. And that is in the memorandum from Mr. Holm. And the three areas that we called out were utilization of E85 gasoline, then looking at the utilization of B20 biodiesel, and then thirdly, using the oxidation catalyst to install on the diesel exhaust. And we could take each one one at a time, the first being the E85 gasoline, and we looked at how many of our cars are E85 capable now, and there's currently 4. And then in the near future, we're going to be getting more squad cars that are E85. So the committee thought, let's take those 4 that we have now and do a pilot and have 2 of them use E85 at a nearby gas station to get their fuel, and then the other 2 not. And then we're going to look at the mileage. We're going to look at efficiency over a period of time, and then make a decision. I imagine we'll still go with the 85 when we're done, but at least we'll know where we're at with the usage. And so are there any questions, comments before I make a motion to direct staff to move forward with this?
I'm sorry.
Okay, Alderman Wesley.
What 4 cars are there? Are they in the police department now? I mean, I don't have a.
I don't believe so, but Mr. Holm will tell us which ones.
One of them is my vehicle. One of them is the dark blue Taurus that sits out here in the parking lot.
So, okay.
And then there's 2 detective cars that have been waffled back and forth as to whether they're E85 or not, but I believe that they are. So basically, it would be, you have the two extremes. You have my vehicle, which is probably put the most mileage on, and you have the blue vehicle out here, which may be one of the least mileage vehicles. I think what the idea is not necessarily, we're going to prove that E85 is better, we're going to prove that E85 is not better. I think it's a step the city is taking towards moving away from, traditional oil. As Mr. Walton said, none of these technologies today are probably going to be long-term technologies. I agree with his opinion that eventually fuel cells and hydrogen is probably going to be, my kids or my grandkids' technology. But we got to get there. And E85 is just one of those many things that provide that bridge for us to get there. And generally speaking, right now, it's a good alternative that's readily available, real easy for us to do, and it's one step that the city's taking towards cleaner air.
Well, I understand, maybe one follow, I understand that, but here we're talking one vehicle that runs a lot more. And I got a blue car that sits in the parking lot, unless you're going to give it in a fleet somewhere that someone's going to drive it a lot more to do the study, and maybe flip out another car, that's fine. And then you got the detective cars that sit half the time too. I mean, how are you going, I'm for the program, but how do you go 2-2?
Right, and I probably should have worded it differently or taken a different approach, that I think probably the idea is to take two compatible cars, one of which has regular gasoline, and one that uses E85, and then look at it. So, I picked the two that have E85, but said it wrong. It would be like Mr. Holmes' car and another car that gets equal mileage and size.
Yeah, probably
Do you
what we would
agree?
do is
Right.
take the two of the Tauruses and put
Yeah.
one of them at E85 and one of them in gasoline.
Yep. Okay. Sure.
If you try it in the winter, Tauruses have had a problem with startability in the winter when it gets really cold. That's the only vehicle I've ever heard of that does have that startability issue.
Thank you. Alderman Coles.
Detective Vista will probably have some new squad cars a couple years from now or next year, and they may have 85 on them, because I think Ford is making all the big cars with 85. So there would be, next year would be a good sample. You could take two squad cars, which they get in, one run on 85 and the other one run on gasoline, and then you could tell, them cars get used a lot. All right, that's something that we could check on, but you couldn't do that until next year, so.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we begin a pilot program utilizing E85 fuel in two of the city vehicles. Is there a second?
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is utilization of B20 biodiesel. We had initially thought that this would have been a good way to start using biodiesel, but then, Mr. Holm, the way I understand, once we took a look at our fleet or our vehicles, that it looks like they can only take up to a maximum of 5% biodiesel. So the B20, it doesn't look like it would be a reality anytime soon. Is that correct?
I've always understood what Mr. Walton understood too, that B20 could be utilized, and maybe I'm going to defer to him because he had some good comments on that. Per our manufacturer specifications, based on what our supervisor Morong found, he found that the specifications limit the percentage of biodiesel to 5%. But I too have kind of heard the other that B20 it works just fine. But I don't know if it becomes a warranty issue or a manufacturer's issue then. So maybe Mr. Walton can comment on that.
B5 has generally been acceptable by all the manufacturers. B20, they do not consider acceptable. The number one reason for that is because there has not been a really good standard set by every manufacturer of biodiesel. What we have done 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, was we wrote our specification on biodiesel to meet the specification for diesel fuel. We have been using B20 for 5, 6 years, Commonwealth Edison uses it in all their emergency vehicles and has been doing it for a year longer than us. We have zero problems with the engines and have never had a problem. General Motors came out with some limited editions to do some testing with B20. The testing went fine. They have not come out with a statement to go beyond that, simply because in parts of the country, B20 in a good stock is not available. In this part of the country, if you specify it right, B20 is readily available that will not give a problem. And I stand behind that we switched to it. We did not tell anybody when we switched to it. We went to B20 overnight. We told them 6 months later. We had no issues. We had nobody making any complaints until when we told them. The only complaint I had back after that, one of our drivers claims he's gained weight because his truck smells like popcorn. And that's the only complaint I've ever had on biodiesel. So again, I would say that biodiesel is safe, even though the manufacturers of the trucks will not warrant it. Also, keep in mind, if you put in diesel fuel that does not meet the exact specification for the vehicle manufacturer, that will also not be covered under warranty if it does any damage. Biodiesel is no different than that. If you do damage with any fuel, whether it's gasoline, biodiesel, diesel, or E85, if you put a fuel into that vehicle that does damage to the vehicle, your warranty will not cover that damage done by the fuel that you purchased.
So given that, Mr. Holm, would it be your recommendation to stay at 2, go to 5, or go to the 20?
Again, I've heard the same thing, that you can run B20 without problems. That may come down to a policy decision. Do you want to run a fuel that technically doesn't or technically voids the warranty? If Mr. Walton would be willing to share his specification, I'm sure we could, write that specification and solicit bids for that specification. But again, it may come down to your decision.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look at, the value of the vehicles and do we want to do that?
And if we didn't want to go to B20 yet, but wanted to go to B5, is that readily available? And,
B5 is readily available as well, correct?
And what would roughly be the price difference from B2 to B5?
Well, we just got a ballpark
Yeah.
costs one time to go to full B20, and it was, for our volume of usage, it was around $300 to $500 a month cost difference.
Okay. Mr. Walton?
However, there's a rebate on that from the IPA on a yearly basis if you use the fuel as well. So you'll make your cost difference back up. Right now, our cost of the fuel is about 3 cents a gallon more expensive. And that's all it is, and we get more than that back from the IPA at the end of the year.
Is the rebate on B5 as well as B20?
No.
Only B20?
B20
Okay.
is the minimum grade you can use that meets the EPA standard for an alternative fuel. B5 does not meet that standard.
Okay. So I'm going to answer a few questions, but maybe we should look into this one further and come up with a ballpark on cost, and then determine what we would do there. Okay. And then was there a comment down to my right? Alderman Wesley.
I have one. Before we make the final determination on this, and I see on the next page with the fire department and the school,
Right.
I think we need to get, before we make this final decision, we need to get that in writing, because I am not going, if we go this route and they put that in their vehicle, I am not going to have them come back and say we just screwed up a $500,000 fire truck. I mean, remember, they buy fuel from us, so we need also have them be involved in this conversation and to be able to give us in writing that they're going to go along with this, that they're taking the responsibility to do. I'm all for it, believe me, okay? But we have to watch our step with the other taxing bodies. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Holm.
We have three fuel tanks right now. We have a large tank and then 2 small tanks. Currently, we run gasoline in the large tank in one of the small tanks, and we run diesel in the other small tank. If we're all talking about going to E85 one day, once we get more and more squads, presumably one of those gasoline tanks will then go over to E85, so we'll have a gasoline, an E85, and a diesel. What I'm trying to say is we're only going to end up, probably, no matter what, we're all going to end up with one diesel. So if we switch to B20, it still is the only source for diesel at our location, so it will have a direct impact of everyone.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on that part? And then one other question, in the future, will our future vehicles be compatible with B20, do you expect, in the public works area?
Maybe Mr. Walton.
That's a tough question to answer because currently the manufacturers will not specify B20. In the future, what they're looking for is the federal government to mandate a specification for biodiesel so that they can make the vehicles specifically for that mandated fuel. Again, what we've done is we've made our mandate for our biodiesel meet the specifications for standard diesel fuel. And that way we've had no problems.
Thank you. Mr. Holm.
Speaking of alternative methods, I mean, one thing that the manufacturers are doing with some of the Class A trucks now, Walmart's starting to run a fleet of hybrid Class A trucks. I mean, so the hybrid technology is making its way into the big trucks, and it's coming.
Good. Okay, so we're going to look further into the whether we go B5 or B20 on that one. And on the third area that the committee decided to make a recommendation to the larger committee on is the diesel oxidation catalyst. And we understand that there is a grant available, and a lot of our vehicles could benefit from this. And question to Mr. Holm or perhaps Mr. Murmas, what is the timeline on the grant process, and when do you think we will start seeing this? Should we decide to pursue it?
I believe we've already secured the grant funds, right? Has that been finalized? But it's a good. Okay, so any day, presumably, we'll hear on the grant funds, with the feeling being that we will get those grant funds. Supervisor Morong's been working with the International on our vehicles to basically spec. Each individual vehicle needs to be looked at and customized to make sure that it's not just one size fits all. So we've been working on that end of things. The grant money's moving forward on that end of things. So very soon we'll put it all together and go forward with it.
Excellent. And do you expect that there's going to be any city expenditures that we're going to need as far as for the equipment or other than time?
Other than time, we've been really operating under using grant funds.
Excellent. This is Alderman Wesley.
But if we get that grant, was that a match grant, There was no match?
100%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So on this one, I don't believe we're going to need any direction from council on it since there's no expenditures. So this one is for information only and a good sign of progress for clean air. And that wraps up this item number 4, unless there's any other questions or comments. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walton.
I'd like to make to you folks is to congratulate you on being proactive. I think it's wonderful when we see a city council trying to be as active as you are to help clean the air and also reduce our dependence on foreign oil.
Well, thank you, and I'd like to thank you for spending the time with us that you have and taking us through what you've learned on the topic and have put in place at the county level. Thank you. Our next item is item number 5, report and recommendation, 2007 roadway project, pay estimate number 2. I make a motion to accept that recommendation. Is there a second on the question? Alderman Coles?
Is this payment, brothers, is this for the streets that are not in industrial, but in the city limits?
Correct.
They haven't put the top coat on most of these streets. Are they going to leave them like that for the wintertime?
No, it's certainly our intention to pave them out before the cold weather
Well, they
comes.
better work quick.
Well, I know, and I've paved after Thanksgiving many times. You just got to get the weather, and 9 times out of 10 that weather comes. So it's 45 and rising, and then we'll be in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
I know.
Okay, there's a motion, a second, the question was called, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Next item is item number 6, report and recommendation. Special service area number 14, it's a request for payment number 2, which is a partial request to the whole project. So I make a motion to make a payment to Arrow Road Construction Company in the amount of $321,902.63. Is there a second? Second. And the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item, item number 7, report and recommendation, special service area number 12, pay estimate number 5. So I make a motion to make a payment to Arrow Road Construction in the amount of $101,462.74. Is there a second? On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 8 is a report and recommendation, contract award to Door Dimensions Incorporated for Rickard Road Station doors. And in looking at the bids, it certainly does look like the lowest bidder is ahead by quite a good margin. And I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion, look for a second, and then if there's any questions. So I make a motion to award a contract to Door Dimensions in the amount of $10,890. Is there a second? On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item number 9, report and recommendation, Hawthorne Avenue resurfacing. This item was on the bills to be paid a few months back, and then there were some questions on that bill, and at that point, Mr. Holm was not available to answer them, so I asked it to be put on at the committee level to work through any questions, concerns, what have you. And this is for the resurfacing of Hawthorne Avenue, or like a portion of Hawthorne Avenue, and it's for the amount of $9,790.44. The funds are available in an account, and it's my understanding that the total cost of the work done on that street was roughly $18,000, and the county is looking to only charge us out the $9,790.44. And with that, I'm going to ask if Mr. Holm would like to add any other information. But first off, I can, Alderman Wesley, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. This was a bill that was questioned when it first came to us. We asked staff to send the county a letter saying that we would not participate in this project due to the fact that it was unincorporated area. So, obviously, I don't know if the letter was sent or the letter was sent and we decided to go ahead. This bill was sent to us, and we rejected to pay this bill because it was in unincorporated area. According to his memo here, obviously there was a lunch with Addison Township about this project. Gary wasn't present, the mayor was there, and Addison Township, I forgot her name, was also there, and their highway department. There was a long discussion about this. My question to you, Gary, what do you have, or who's got the authorization to tell county or DuPage County to go ahead and do it, providing that it's under $10,000?
Well, first of all, this portion of Hawthorne Avenue that we're talking about and all the streets that we're talking about were all in the city, not unincorporated. But the township was going to do them as part of the township's project. Staff recognized back in March that we did not have authority to authorize spending, and therefore we brought it to the committee in March for a recommendation. So, staff does not have that authority to approve going forward with funding.
Well, let me ask you a question there. In March, it was denied not to go forward with this project. That was discussion.
Correct.
So why did
That was
this
staff's
project?
recommendation, actually, at the time.
But that was our vote
Yeah.
to not go forward with this project. Since then, we went forward with this project. My question again, Hawthorne is not part of our community. I don't know what part of Hawthorne is part of ours. That's behind the firehouse.
That's the part that it's ours, actually. It's just that part by the firehouse and by the Park District frontage there, by the detention pond. That's the part that's ours, and going east from there is the township.
But again, I addressed that the concern was on an agenda that was discussed that we would not go forward with this project, and it somehow it got done. You know what? I agree we got to pay the bill. I would make a recommendation that, if you don't mind, that we pay the bill. Until then, pay the bill, but in my recommendation, I would say that now on, once we direct staff to send a letter or deny it, that we don't get another bill from county that they did a road project. Because I remember, and I pulled the minutes up, I happened to leave them at home, our vote was to deny the claim. Do not do anything. But obviously, someone gave the authorization. So obviously, we are stuck with this bill, and I don't want to screw county because they did the project, and you're right. I did get the facts of bill was $18,000 that they did on that road. They cut it in half. They taken wash on half of it, okay? But my recommendation now that anything that's done with any unincorporated areas that we go forward county, that it needs to go, a letter's got to be sent out and sent back to council that the letter was sent out or something, that this does not happen again. Because I don't think it's fair as taxpayers that we should be doing this. I mean, it's a county project. It's not our project. It wasn't a budget item, okay? But now we're taking it out of account that, yes, there's money there, but it's not a budget item. We're taking it out of another project. So that's fine. I will make the motion, or you make the motion, pay the bill, and let's get over with them.
So Alderman Wesley is making the motion, and I'm seconding it. And a question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is item number 10, and that is an informational item, the September Mosquito Abatement Program Report. And if we all recall, we received one earlier, and it was very vague, and it was not specific to Wooddale. Now we do have the Wooddale data. I reviewed it. It looks much better and much more specific